Seriously, if there's anyone willing to hire someone with such low qualifications, let me know. Well, that's if such a fool exists.
It's Major Bank's final interview. I was trembling with anger at being mocked for my evening high school degree right there. All right, please wait a moment. If you want to see him that badly, I'll call him. Just as he wished, when that fool arrived, the interviewer turned pale. The person I called was, "My name is David Miller. I'm 20, and I just graduated from an evening high school this spring. Originally, due to my dad's work situation, I had lived in France from the time I was born and came back to the US when I was in 8th grade. But I was born and raised in the France. Even though my parents are both Americans, I mainly spoke French in my daily life and had shaky English skills. I had difficulty communicating in English, did not fit in at school, and was always alone. After graduating from middle school, I went on to a night school. Once there, my classmates at the night school were of various ages, genders, and backgrounds. No one made fun of my shaky English. Instead, they kindly helped me out. There were folks older than me, so I never felt out of place. On the contrary, more people started asking me to teach them French. I had no friends and didn't know how to socialize, and at first, communication was hard. But as days went by and I got used to my classmates, who couldn't fit in during middle school, made many friends. Middle school was a place of fear with no enjoyment, but high school allowed me to live each day with joy and fulfillment. Now, I'm in front of a major bank. The brand new suit I'm wearing is recently purchased. Today, I have an interview at this bank. The idea of me having an interview at such a big bank was surprising. While holding my hand to my rapidly beating heart out of nervousness, I recalled the many words of encouragement I received. All right, let's do this. I took a deep breath and started walking. When I spoke to a staff member inside, I was guided to what might be the interview room, with a sign that read conference room.
Please wait here until you are called.
Understood, thank you. I thanked the person who showed me in and sat down on the provided chair. I waited for about 10 minutes.
Sorry for the wait. We will begin the interview now. Please come in.
Yes, thank you. I was called by a woman inside, took another deep breath, and entered the room.
Please take a seat.
Thank you. As soon as I entered the room, the woman asked me to sit down, and I took my seat, tense and nervous. The interviewer was a man named Mitchell, and the record-keeping lady who had just spoken to me. After I took a seat, Mitchell stared at the resume I had sent in advance and immediately let out a heavy sigh.
Well, all right then. Shall we begin the interview?
Oh, yes, thank you. I felt uneasy with Mitchell's casual approach, but I wondered if perhaps he was interviewing me during an exceptionally busy time, so I adjusted my attitude and replied accordingly. However,
You're a high school diploma?
yes,
And it was an evening program. I see.
murmuring to himself, he looked genuinely annoyed and propped his chin up with his hand.
Your name is Miller, right?
Yes,
A returnee from France, but with this educational background. Well,
I noticed the job posting didn't require a specific educational background.
Yes, well, but who would have thought someone with just a high school diploma would apply, especially from an evening program?
Excuse me, but is there an issue with coming from an evening high school program? I couldn't help but sense the sting in his words, so I dared to ask. However, in the next moment, he burst out laughing.
This is hilarious.
Sorry.
No, my apologies. I just didn't expect such an obvious question.
Obvious? What's he talking about?
Miller, you asked if there's a problem with attending an evening program. Of course there is.
What?
After all, evening high schools are where those who couldn't make it to regular high schools end up, right? Moreover, you didn't even go to college, did you? Isn't that just a nest of issues? Who would want to hire such low-tier candidates? If there's someone out there willing to hire them, please let me know. But I doubt there's anyone that foolish.
Laughing uproariously, he seemed to find his own words so funny that tears formed in his eyes. The record-keeping lady, on the other hand, didn't even glance at him and appeared to be silently typing down the conversation. All I could hear in the room were Mitchell's laughter, the lady's typing, and the subtle trembling of my anger. Should I have just stayed silent? Who does this guy think he is? No matter his position, does he think it's okay to treat a serious job applicant who came for an interview like this? Being ridiculed to this extent and feeling so unwelcome in an interview, I'd honestly want to walk out right now. But leaving now, after being made a fool of, really rubs me the wrong way, and more than anything, I just can't let it go. Understood?
Huh?
Understood. Can I take a moment of your time?
What are you?
Overcome by anger, a deep, gruff voice emerged from me, deeper than I had anticipated. But when Mitchell, who seemingly expected me to tuck tail and run, heard my voice, he noticeably flinched. He seemed deeply shaken by my demeanor. Seeing that, I realized I needed to remain calm. Taking a deep breath, I said, "Excuse me for a moment," and pulled out my mobile from my bag.
What are you doing? We're in the middle of an interview?
He stared at me and I glared back. Well, wasn't it you? Who said you wanted to see?
Huh?
You want to see someone like me, the bottom of the barrel, getting hired, right?
Hey, what are you getting at? Are you mocking me?
I'd never mock. I'm just about to call the fool who hires the bottom of the barrel, so please wait a moment. Emphasizing the fool who hires the bottom of the barrel, he seemed to shrink under my gaze, falling silent. I, while keeping my gaze fixed on him, pressed the call button. The person on the other end picked up immediately.
Hello, what's up?
I'm sorry, the interviewer is asking for you. Can you come?
Got it. I'll be right there.
Because I had the call on speaker, Mitchell heard the voice too.
What? What just happened?
His face grew paler by the second. He stood up, seemingly in a panic, pacing the room, then sat back down, visibly distraught. I didn't say a word, just watched him. A few minutes later, he must have really come right away. The conference room door opened, and there was a palpable tension in the air.
Excuse me.
Upon seeing the man in his 60s who entered, Mitchell practically fell over himself in his rush to bow deeply.
Thompson, Why are you here?
Why didn't you call for me? I just came because I was summoned. Is there a problem?
The man referred to as Thompson gave a pale Mitchell a brief look, then turned to me.
Sorry for the wait.
No worries. I apologize for calling you out of the blue.
That's all right. After all, I asked you for this favor in the first place, so no need to fret.
The person I called on the phone, it was Mike Thompson, the CEO of this bank.
So what the heck happened?
He glanced between me, Mitchell, and the female secretary. As I was wondering where to begin, Mitchell hurriedly approached Thompson. Thompson raised his eyebrows in dismay at Mitchell's fluster.
Thompson, you misunderstand. I didn't call for you. I was just telling him that based on his qualifications, he wasn't fit for the job. Then, for some reason, he called you. Wait, how did you even get CEO's contact?
It seemed Mitchell finally realized something was off. This is a bit awkward to say, but this is Thompson, the CEO you were eager to see. The fool who hires bottom feeders like me. After introducing him with a warm smile, Mitchell stared at me, mouth agape, looking utterly defeated.
What's going on here?
Nothing much, really. I'm just a regular guy here for an interview. However, I've known Thompson for years, and he recommended me for this position.
You're lying.
Thompson, nodding in agreement with my words, chimed in, "It's no lie. David is someone I've kept an eye on for years. I heard he graduated high school recently, and I wanted him to work for us, so I scouted him."
You personally, Thompson? If that's the case, why did he even need an interview? Why was I involved in?
That Mitchell was to keep an eye on you.
Excuse me.
Mitchell, with a look of complete confusion, was met by Thompson's piercing gaze.
Last month, I received a complaint from someone who had interviewed with us.
A complaint?
The man in charge of the interview, Mitchell, had a terrible attitude.
What?
I've received such complaints before, not just about you. People have different perspectives and interpretations, but in the last few months, there's been an unusual spike in similar complaints. And every single one points to you, Mitchell. They say you laughed at their resumes, mocked their appearances. The complaints varied, but they all centered on you.
That's a misunderstanding. I would never.
Then what about what David just said earlier?
That he made that up. He's trying to frame me.
Is that so?
Yes. I never said any such thing. Not today. Not in any previous interviews.
Thinking he could brush it off with just a nod from Thompson, he began to ramble on. He was completely oblivious to the fact that there wasn't a hint of a smile in Thompson's eyes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
If what you're saying is indeed true, we'll need to thoroughly investigate everything that's happened up till now. First, we should confirm the rumors David mentioned. Have you got the records?
Yes, here they are.
Thank you.
What's that?
The one approached by Thompson was a quiet female secretary who had been present the whole time. She nodded in response to Thompson's voice and handed something she pulled out from her pocket to him.
Everything from the earlier interview has been recorded on this. We need to check it now and verify whose story holds up.
Watching Thompson swing the voice recorder, Mitchell broke into a cold sweat and just collapsed right there. He probably realized he couldn't pull the wool over anyone's eyes. In his frustration, he snapped at the woman, "Hey, did you deceive me?" However, Thompson intervened. "It's what I gave her. I was hoping it'd serve as evidence to clear your name." "What do you mean by deceived? You've got nothing to hide, right? If so, shouldn't you be grateful this exists?"
Oh,
Mitchell was at a loss for words and hung his head in defeat.
Mitchell, now isn't the time to make excuses, lash out in anger, or remain silent.
At Thompson's words, Mitchell slowly stood up and said, "I'm truly sorry." However, frightened by Thompson, who raised his voice saying, "You're apologizing to the wrong person," he reflexively turned to face me. In a barely audible voice, he whispered, "I'm truly sorry. Apologizing to me."
You, stay home for a while. I'll inform you about the disciplinary actions later.
With Mitchell looking downcast, I left the room with Thompson.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. I was led by him into a lounge. While enjoying a cup of tea that the secretary had made for me, he apologized to me with a grave look.
I'm deeply sorry for causing you distress, even if it was for auditing purposes. I truly am.
Please, it's okay. Mitchell was really harsh earlier. It got to me, and I retaliated. I'm sorry.
It's all right. You're the one who endured. If anyone is ridiculed without reason, it's understandable to be angry. You're especially quick-witted, so you must have been able to keep your cool, as expected of a genius.
Please stop. That's all in the past. Even when I was in France, I always excelled academically more than others. By the time talks of returning to the US started at home, I was already studying at a high school level, having skipped grades. However, I could not speak English, so I transferred to an American junior high school. I had to study topics in English, a language I wasn't accustomed to, even though I had already covered them back in France.
You know, I often wonder just how far you would have gone if you had stayed in France.
Yeah, I wonder that myself. I guess if that was the case, maybe by now I'd be studying at a prestigious university in France. Perhaps conducting research or even working after completing college. The possibility of having started a business existed too. When I think of all the potential paths, there's a sense of regret. However, I'm quite content with where I am now.
Well, I wanted to witness your potential firsthand, which is why I wanted you here.
He indeed gave me this opportunity for the interview. You're overestimating me.
No, it's not, but I didn't expect Mitchell to be so much. You must be exhausted. Take a break, okay?
Thank you. I had heard it was just a formality of an interview, so I was taken aback when I was asked to cooperate with information about Mitchell. In the end, I too said some immature things, but I'm relieved it all seemed to settle down. How did a regular guy like me get to know the CEO of a major bank, Thompson? If asked, I would answer, because he's my benefactor. I first met him during the summer of my 8th grade. I wasn't adjusting well to school. The subjects were all too easy and uninteresting, and English was challenging with many unfamiliar things. Everything wasn't going well for me, with my teenage rebellious phase hitting hard. I began wandering the streets of the entertainment district late at night. One night, While wandering through the neon-lit streets as usual, it was Thompson who approached me.
You're a junior high kid, aren't you? What are you doing out this late?
What's it to you, old man? Mind your own business.
That's rude to call me an old man.
You look every bit the part. Or should I say geezer?
A bit early to be called that.
I remember being taken aback when, despite my sarcastic tone, he began laughing cheerfully. After that, every time I went to the entertainment district, he would inevitably show up. He'd always ask me, "What are you doing out this late?" But he never once told me to go straight home. I think he might have been approaching other kids like me, knowing that each of us had our own burdens, so he deliberately never told us to go home. At first, I found him annoying, but over time, I began to open up to him, who would listen to everything and affirm me.
Too easy classes and unfamiliar English. It sounds frustration is going to build up.
You get it, old man.
Of course, I ain't a fool, you know. You're sharp and have a good head on your shoulders. The gap between who you were in France and who you are now must have been tough.
While he did scold me for being out so late, he never once negated my character, way of life, or the feelings I had nowhere to channel.
I get not wanting to go to school, but you really should graduate from high school. You, my friend, are meant to soar globally. Don't get disappointed by the limited world of American middle school. Explore the broader world. Meet many people, build connections. One day, you might think back and be glad you went to school properly. How about evening classes? There, you wouldn't stand out.
I'm truly grateful to him, who introduced me to a night school at that time. 1 month after the interview incident, despite some hiccups, I ended up working at this bank as planned. The training is tough, but the senior folks around me are all really supportive and have been a big help. Amidst all this, there came a day when the training was nearing its end. I came across some data and found myself scratching my head. There was a series of numbers I hadn't seen before. Feeling suspicious, I consulted with a colleague. He too was unfamiliar with it. He quickly spoke to our boss, and I also sought advice from Thompson. Upon further investigation, it turned out that the data was a record of unauthorized withdrawals. In other words, embezzlement records. Surprisingly, the perpetrator was caught quite easily. It was Mitchell. After the whole interview fiasco, he had been demoted from his HR position to a regular desk job. Perhaps he couldn't stand having to follow to younger employees whom he'd always looked down upon. Rather than buckling down and working hard, he was cold-heartedly cheating the elderly and robbing them of their savings. He also lied about collecting insurance premiums to scam money and colluded with subcontractors to inflate expenses and embezzle. He'd been involved in multiple sneaky and despicable crimes. Under Thompson's guidance, when we looked deeper, more and more Mitchell's crimes came to light. The stolen amount was substantial. Mitchell was soon arrested by Thompson's cop friend, William. Given the number of victims, the news covered the story, which tanked the bank's reputation. Seeing Thompson apologize on TV was painful, but he said to me, "Thanks to you, we could resolve this before it got any worse." I really appreciate it. Moreover, people around me often remarked how observant I was, and I was grateful to find myself given more responsibilities. The day the issue with Mitchell was finally resolved, I was at the bar with Thompson and William. They said it was a belated celebration for starting my job. I had known William for some time, too, and the three of us chatted away.
I'd love to have a drink with you someday.
What's gotten into you all of a sudden? Had too much to drink.
I ain't drunk yet. Don't treat me like an old man.
You say that, but you're over 70, right? You're definitely an old-timer.
Shut it. Right from our first meeting, you called me an old man.
Well, you already seemed old back then.
I might have been old, but back in the day, I was what they called a silver fox.
Ha ha ha. Self-proclaimed Silver Fox Thompson, maybe drunk, fell asleep right there. As he muttered my name in his sleep with a hint of resentment, William started talking softly. Turns out, Thompson had a rough past, rougher than mine, and he had lost a younger colleague in a tragic accident.
After that accident, he started doing nighttime patrols, vowing to protect kids so something like that would never happen again.
Is that so?
He wanted to ensure young folks didn't get into trouble. Whenever he saw kids on the streets, he'd approach them. Sometimes they'd run, and sometimes he'd get beaten up, like they were mugging an old man. That neighborhood was filled with such rough folks, so seeing someone like you, who'd talk back but wouldn't lay a hand, was rare. He always had a soft spot for you. Now it's your turn to give back.
I planned to, without being told. Responding to him like that, I found myself nodding a few times in my head. I see. I was spotted on those night strolls and was being watched over to ensure I didn't get into any trouble, huh? Back then, everyone seemed like an enemy, and I hadn't realized his efforts. It's a bitter pill, but I owe where I am today to Thompson. Thank you, Thompson. I'll push even harder. Saying my thanks to him, I felt like he smiled even in his sleep. I'll return the favor you did for me. So please, live a long life. Thompson,